the introduction. Thank you, Sasha. I mean, I made a note to have to prompt you to do that, and you did it even though I didn't see my own note. So let's go through introductions, and Bill Simmons with the Broadband Consortium. Let's keep it to 15 seconds, just what we do and who we're with. Broadband Consortia, and working as a team member with a really great team. Maria, speaking of team members.
Maria Kelly, Broadband Consortium, Project Coordinator.
Greg, let's go with you next.
Greg Hayward, Trackable Health and OB Smart. We're delivering sustainable trust.
He's one of our smart city proteges, guys. It's going to make the world a better place. Sasha.
Hey, I'm Sasha Burrows. I'm Communications Associate with the BCPC.
Lauren, well, we'll introduce you when it's your turn. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay, Lisa Ludovici.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lisa Ludovici, Director of Government Affairs for Charter Communications, also known as Spectrum.
Thank you, Lisa. And Terry Theobald.
Terry Theobald, Ventura County.
John Elazin.
Hi, Bill.
John.
Hi, Bill. John Elassen, Public Works Director, City of Carpinteria.
Appreciate your email today, John.
Yes.
Rich Graysick.
Rich Graysick, City of Lompoc, Project Administrator here in the city.
And there's Randall Hernandez.
Hello, everyone. Randall Hernandez, Director of External Affairs for Verizon.
And Jeff Marisek.
Morning, everybody. Jeff Marisek, Chief Information Officer, Santa Maria.
And Don Gerkensmeyer.
Hello, everybody. Don Gerkensmeyer, Ventura County Office of Education, Network Manager.
And Noel Heredia.
Hi, Noel Heredia, Chief Technology Officer of Digital Value Creation.
And Kurt Dennett from Los Alamos, it says.
Hi, yeah, my name's Kurt Dennett. I'm a Vice President of Technology and Infrastructure with a nonprofit in the Tri-Counties. Yeah, and I live in Los Alamos.
You can talk about that a little bit later, Kurt. We'd love to hear from you.
Okay.
Okay. Somebody by the name of Kim. Nope, she's just gonna be there. And John? Nope.
That must be
audio issues there. And Adam Hendel.
You did?
Now you're there.
I'm just getting back to my desk. Adam Hendel, Principal Engineer in Public Works, City of Santa Barbara. Thanks.
Okay. And Stephen Sawyer.
Hey, good morning, Bill. Good morning, everybody. This is Stephen Sawyer, Director of Government Affairs for Charter Communications, also known as Spectrum.
Yep. I see Eleanor Gardner. I hadn't seen you forever.
Long time no see, Bill. Hi, everyone. I'm Eleanor Gartner on the Public and Government Affairs team at Cox Communications in Santa Barbara.
Did you tell them where to plant that thing?
And John Heffernan.
I'm not certain where it's going to go yet. I'll do it.
And the weed?
Yeah.
Tell them to pull that big weed out.
I will.
I think someone needs to be muted.
Well, then you could tell them.
I know.
Hey, John.
I was upstairs taking a shower.
Hey, John, we need you to mute your phone.
Or Sasha, you can probably mute him too.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, I think you called on me. Thanks. Good morning, everybody. John Heffernan, External Affairs, Government Relations at AT&T.
Yeah. And Brian Coleman.
Hello, everyone. I'm with the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, and I'm the Regional Economic Recovery Coordinator for the Central Coast.
Thank you, Brian. Shannon Sweeney.
Hello, Shannon Sweeney, Public Works, City of Guadalupe.
Thank you for joining us, Shannon.
Thank you.
And there's Jory Wolf.
try to get off mute there. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Tori Wolf, Magellan Advisors, assisting governments with broadband planning and implementation.
And we have Tim Williams.
Hey, Bill. Hey, everybody. Tim Williams from Astound Broadband.
Okay. Did I miss anybody?
I joined a minute late. This is Laura Fiedler.
Oh, hi, Laura. I didn't see you pop on.
Sorry, a little bit late.
That's all right. And John, I think we're going to need you to mute your phone or your Zoom connection because we're getting a little bit of feedback from you. There you go. Thank you. Thank you very much. So in terms of our agenda today, we're going to give you an update. We talked about the fact that we have quarterly updates from each of the 3 counties this quarter. This month is going to be Santa Barbara County, and will be followed by Ventura County next month and San Luis Obispo County the month following that. We'll be talking about what's going on with the overall Santa Barbara County project. Interesting things that we're talking about as we get into depth is the public sector conversation. And so I've just highlighted some bullets for you to see, and we'll be touching on those as it relates to the conversation. Once again, smart city innovation is a placeholder. It's something that it's a direction we're going. It's going to be an ongoing topic of conversation, and we'll finish with just sharing municipality updates and what everybody's doing and where we're trying to go. So that's our meeting today. And knowing that, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce Lauren Bianchi Clement. I've known Lauren for a few years. She had another life in Ventura County before going up to Santa Barbara County. We were sorry to lose her. But she is a great advocate and communicator and strategist, and been a great cheerleader for us in terms of everything we're trying to do in Santa Barbara County. And so we're thrilled to have her here to talk about what the team is doing with SBCAG and some of the lessons learned. And Lauren, take it away.
Great. And I'm assuming you're gonna, oh, perfect. So yes, hi, well, it's great to see everyone. Thanks for having me, Bill. As Bill mentioned, I am the Government Affairs and Public Information Manager for Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. It's great to see a lot of Santa Barbara County people on the phone, but for those of you who do not know us, we are the Regional Metropolitan Transportation Planning Agency for Santa Barbara County. So in Ventura County, you may be familiar with SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments. And so that is our sister organization. And then in San Luis Obispo, it's SLOCOG. And so we work on resolving problems that cross jurisdictional boundaries. And so we know that broadband does just that. It doesn't stop at a city or county boundary. And we gave an update to this group in January on an effort that we are partnering with the consortium on for a broadband strategic plan for Santa Barbara County, and truly working to defy the narrative that government works too slow. And so we are more than halfway through our one-year effort on developing a broadband strategic plan for this county. And we kicked it off really as informational gathering. And so, so here on the slide, you can kind of see some of the outcomes that we're hoping and implementing for this strategic plan effort, gathering GIS data and information from the public, to better understand where the gaps are for fiber and broadband access, and to really address the digital divide. And so we are nearing completion of our data collection from the public. And we're pleased to say that we really definitely blew out of the water our goal for collecting data from the public. There was over 3,100 speed tests conducted countywide, as well as a needs assessment survey to really get down into the weeds to understand what is the digital divide here in Santa Barbara County. And so that was about over 1,200 surveys taken there. And right now we are also wrapping up outreach meetings. So in Santa Barbara County, there's 8 cities and the unincorporated area. And so we have undergone 10 community outreach meetings. We'll be wrapping up with the city of Carpinteria. We're in Solvang tonight and was in the city of Santa Barbara last night. We are meeting with city staff and to better understand the broadband readiness of our public sectors in our cities and what the needs are that we would like to include in our strategic plan. And then public sector mapping and advisory groups. So, what's next and what's ahead for us in this process? I think we're on the next slide here. Yeah. So, so all of our coordination is simultaneously working to get us ready for funding here in Santa Barbara County, and so that we're all aligned with similar goals in mind, both on the city level, county level, and regional level. And so so we're about our 90-day mark out from having a draft of our plan with recommendations, but simultaneously, we're getting ready to support the cities with technical assistance grant applications this summer, as well as last mile funding this fall, and working with community partners on a digital inclusion coalition. There is just a lot of really great work and a lot of great motivation that we're really just trying to continue to move forward on. And I think that kind of wraps it up for what I wanted to update this group on, is kind of where we're going. And we're really excited to present the recommendations of that plan to this group in the future. But what I want everyone to kind of leave with is that what we're doing here in Santa Barbara County is remarkable. We haven't seen this collaborative effort between North and South County and among our government partners in the recent future. People are coming together around this issue like never before. You can certainly see that there was a need, a vacuum for leadership on broadband. And it's great to see that collaboration in the public sector, but then also through the consortium with the private sector as important partners in this effort, as we kind of figure out where do we go from here with funding that's available on a state and federal level. Is there anything else, Bill, that you would like to add to our work?
I think that what I'd like to do is open it up for conversations, Lauren, and we based on what people that have been part of the process and part of the dialogue all along, and Maria wanted to be able to just, in terms of this particular graphic, there's a saying about groups coming together that are beginning to work together. It's called storming, forming, norming, and performing. I mean, it's a process. And so we've had our first meeting, and we've done an awful lot of brainstorming, as public participants in the public sector. Now we're getting into some of the formation and normalization, of the conversation. But by the time we get through this, I imagine at the end of the year, we're going to provide recommendations of how we got organized and who's doing what, where, and how this is all going to play out. And so we'll be wanting to position everybody for performing. And so there is a method to the madness. It's kind of an interesting process. And we're learning a lot going through it. At the community meeting last night, I said, every time I think I know what we're doing or why we're doing it, I'm surprised. Because it never turned out the way we anticipate, but that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. We learn a lot.
Hey, Bill, with that said, it's Randall from Verizon. So Bill, Maria, Lauren, so thank you for all the work you've done. Can you give us a little bit of flavor of what you've heard from the community meetings, and in particular, what you heard yesterday from the City of Santa Barbara meeting?
So I wasn't at the City of Santa Barbara meeting, but Bill can speak to that. And I can speak to other meetings that I've been at too. So Bill, do you want to start with Santa Barbara?
The one flavor that I pick up, and I'll also go, the one flavor is the people in the panel are talking about a topic that I'm surprised it's the first time they've been talking about it. I mean, broadband is a topic and the stories are eerily similar, but it's the first time we've gotten together and had the conversation. And then all of a sudden you get to this whole point of, well, gee, we should be talking about this. We should be doing that. There's opportunities to work together on this and that. And it is a magic moment. And so instead of hearing from, yes, we do hear a little bit from the community, but the stakeholders at the panel, you know, that's a really interesting conversation. Schools are really out there. They've been fighting the fire all along. And they you know, the school district last night showed some great leadership in terms of what they've been able to accomplish. And Cox was right there along their side, you know, helping them do that all along. And it was a great story. But yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question. Yeah, I think that
I have some more to add too.
Yeah.
Bill, I could too add, you know, in kind of hearing from Goleta and Lompoc and other communities, digital literacy is one of the #1 issues, as you could probably, Randall, in your career, just knowing it's just that intimidation factor of what is broadband and what is it not. And surprisingly, it's so, you know, it's okay that you know, the 99.9% of people have no clue what broadband is, and they just know that they need to connect to the internet. And so I think demystifying that and some digital literacy is really important. There's been talk about kind of how that can roll out and what that would look like in the future, and who's responsible for meeting those needs and the digital literacy needs. Also connecting schools, like you have Goleta Union, and there's a lot of different schools around, and the need for secure connections, secure fiber for the school that's reliable for emergency response and communicating with families, and then getting connected during, you know, like what happened with COVID. It just, they hacked their way to make it work for everyone. But having a secure fiber network that connects the district office with the schools is something that was also talked about need for. So it's really neat to kind of see like the infrastructure piece. We talked about making that magic happen for the schools and communities and businesses, but then also that digital literacy component too, that helps people just get connected to everything that they need to do online. Maria, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, just you covered almost all of it really well. Thanks, Lauren. That it's the access, it's the understanding of the infrastructure, identifying what equipment is needed to adequately access the infrastructure. So equipment and technology come up a lot in across the board. I've been to all of them except for last night, and I have copious notes that will be translated into the strategy. But one of the things that came up also across the board is training. And part of these community conversations really are going to help in the coalition building, identify who's doing the training well at the community level and how to enhance it. And that's training for families, parents, the seniors, everyone, and really addressing any type of language barriers. Language does come up significantly as a barrier to understanding how to sign up for affordability programs. But it's definitely, you know, helping translate and identifying the trusted agents at the community level to really, because some of these barriers aren't significant, they're consistent and they're there. So working with the coalition, moving forward to really dig in and serve that need at the community level.
We had Vanessa Valerio with the Women's Economic Ventures last night. And she had one of those mic drop moments. She was, I said this earlier, but not everybody was on the call yet. She was talking, her job is to work with the Hispanic community from Weave's standpoint in terms of helping the business people get their businesses going. And so they had a business assistance development class for entrepreneurs. had like 24 folks that were enrolled in it, and it was a physical meeting. And then they had the lockdown the day of. And so they immediately, you know, or maybe the week of, but they immediately converted the physical meeting to a virtual meeting via Zoom. And they were only able to get 6 people. So when you're sitting there and looking at the scope and magnitude of the population and of the community at large, and you go from 24 in attendance to you can only serve 6, I mean, it was one of those moments that it was astonishing. And I just thought it was very, very powerful in terms of what we're trying to do. It really isn't, you know, and I was talking to somebody this morning, it really isn't the connection as much as it is the literacy and the divide aspect to all of this. And so that's really where one of the findings we're going to have to spend some time on and really work through in terms of where the funding is coming this next year.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I'm glad someone from the small business community was there, because again, we've seen such a great digital divide with small business as well as with students over the last couple of years. And I think an increasing focus on digital literacy with that group as well as with seniors too is going to be important going forward. Yeah. And in fact, I think good to see, we now know that sort of this hybrid environment is a thing that's common now, no matter what we're doing. So we need to make sure that there's that infrastructure in place that we can continue to do that, whether it's communicating with government or telehealth or whatever it might be. Yep. So thank you for the great work.
Yeah, they also said with recruitment too, you know, the job vacancies was talked about and kind of the need for reliability and kind of what that is providing as well and training.
Kurt, were you at the Los Alamos meeting that we had there? You'll need.
No, actually, I just got involved. I just heard about the Conservancy through Tim Williams, a friend of mine, recently, and I wish I would have been. As I said, I'm in the IT business, and Los Alamos being a small community, very tight knit, and people reach out to me often, you know, about the lack of broadband in Los Alamos. Los Alamos is. It's kind of a hodgepodge. We have many people that commute to both Santa Maria and Santa Barbara, but there's also many residents that just work in jobs around the town, primarily in agriculture. We have an elementary school there that's K through 8. And during the last couple of years through the pandemic, even though the Los Alamos school is part of Orchid school district, they couldn't attend school because the lack of broadband there. So it came to my attention, and I've also I have a hybrid work environment as well, and my wife and I, she works in Santa Maria, I work in Santa Barbara. In order for us to be able to work at home, one of us can work at home and the other one goes in the office. And vice versa. So because the lack of broadband there. So that's actually why I was there, and I wish I would have been involved. I'd like to try to attend the meeting tonight in Sawbang, because Los Alamos is considered part of the San Ynez Valley now. So yeah.
Yeah, that's at 5:30 today at City Hall.
Thank you. I'll be there.
That particular meeting was quite emotional. I mean, I said that I minimized the connection problem, but in Los Alamos, that is the exception. I mean, they do have a connection problem.
Yes, it is. And yeah, it was really kind of heartbreaking. You know, some of these kids that they didn't know what to do. They wanted to attend school, but they couldn't. Some of them would try to go up and get in the building because there is that one internet connection there in the school, but it wasn't enough for the entire school population. So
yeah, no, it moved to the front of the line as far as I was concerned, in terms of where action is required, and so I appreciate you for showing up on their behalf, and you know we're going to want to keep talking to you about what we can do in that area. That part.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate being invited.
Yeah. Any other questions that we're talking about for Lauren? At this point, I'm sure we're going to have lots of questions as time goes on, but in the front of people's minds.
You could sign up if you want to stay involved. There is a newsletter that we have, sbcag.org/broadband. At the top, it says, stay involved or get involved. And so you can sign up for the newsletter there. We'll be releasing the draft plan through that newsletter, as well as letting folks know when there'll be presentations on that plan. Thanks, Maria, who put it in the chat. So certainly sign up for that newsletter to stay informed, and really looking forward to the recommendations, and just really proud of the leadership of our board that's made up of all the mayors, most of all the mayors of our cities, and the County Board of Supervisors for their leadership to kind of really roll up their sleeves and get involved in this and say that this is a priority this year. And fill that vacuum of leadership that existed around broadband for this county, so we can kind of move forward and build a better future.
Maria, I'm going to punch it over to you for just a second. I'm going to cue you up. One of the things we've been talking about statewide, when we get a chance to have an audience statewide, is what Maria terms as the hub and spoke model. And so we were able to brief it to a number of other consortia and the CETF and others, and talking about Santa Barbara as a very unique place with a hub and spoke model. Any thoughts about that, Maria? I mean, you coined the phrase.
Well, it's a real thing. I mean, I took it out of organizational design and just applied it from a business to a thing. One of the thing that was interesting that the California Emerging Technology Fund found so interesting is that there's a lot of still exploring about what is the best practices, how to organize as a region, and how do you stay inclusive and collaborative. And what was so great about Santa Barbara is once everything started to fall in place, it was easy to really find sort of that collaborative, but that center, that core, the anchor, which is SBCAG, where those policy decisions are going to need to be made. But we've received a grant to continue to explore how to help communities organize. It's kind of like the infrastructure. How do we avoid how do we create redundancy without duplicating? And really do our best at identifying where those gaps are and those services and opportunities are. So I appreciate Bill always giving me credit for that, but it was one that was just out there and was easy to apply to what Santa Barbara is doing. And it's fun to try to play with it a little bit more and find those core leadership within the regions to continue to advance the digital inclusive work. So continuing to meet with the Santa Barbara Foundation for countywide efforts on helping identify community-based organizations and partners through collecting through these forum, all these outreach partners, everybody that's participated on a panel and a community member, and helping continue to move that organizational work effort forward past the strategy planning.
One last thing I'll mention before we close out this topic, and it's another one of those unanticipated outcomes is, Maria, Lauren, you might want to bring it up and talk about it or take it, but it's the idea of a digital equity coalition, or a digital inclusion coalition. I'm not sure what we would call it, but if anything, the outreach meetings that we've done has started a conversation. Where the conversation goes, what it does with the creation of these partners. It's very different than an infrastructure conversation, but it's a very necessary conversation. And so, in my back of my mind, I'm trying to figure out, we started this thing looking at infrastructure, but this whole different side of things is where a lot of it is going at this moment. And Lauren, you might have some thoughts. Maria, I'd be interested in your comments about that whole aspect of what we've learned so far. Nope.
Well, it was intentional. That was the point. That was the way it was, or it was not. The intention was to bring key stakeholders from different sectors to have that conversation. In the presentations at the community forum, you'll always hear me say, while we're discussing infrastructure, it's really important to parallel path the people side of it as well. And so while I love that it seems organic in nature, that's always the best way to have it be received. It was really intentional with that, with the digital equity, digital inclusion in mind, including people from all those sectors that are heavily impacted by unreliable or lack of access to connectivity. And we hear that a lot from the health industries that have been engaging on these panels, and they're doing an outstanding job of making sure they're trying to stay connected to their patients. And they have been also at the forefront of saying the demands for that service are going to increase, which means it's going to increase the need for that reliability.
Okay. I'm going to move on with the conversation and dig a little bit deeper into the municipality, the public side discussion. So we've been calling stakeholders together in terms of this particular drawing. We've had a couple of meetings. I've now been engaging with one-on-ones in this area to start developing, a peel the onion approach of where we're going in terms of understanding what each city has done, is doing, is interested in doing, because every city's got a different story. And in capturing that story is really important. What's really interesting, though, this particular chart flows naturally in that this was presented by the CPUC 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, as best practices for municipal participation. And they have, this is the model. One of the points we made at Los Alamos the other night, as people were talking about it, I've been taking trips to Los Alamos since 2014, and I know some of the people there, and it's like, what's different? Why do we believe you now? In terms of, we've been talking about this for years and nothing's happened. And what's different now is that you do see public sector participation. It's going to be a new landscape. And we are understanding that certain models on the private side don't pencil out, and we're going to need public investment. And so there's different ways in which that public investment can occur in different roles that the public sector can take. And so when we have the conversations, this comes to play. And a number of themes so far. One theme is I don't know of anybody that's interested in being an ISP. It's clearly, that is the role of industry. And so if that is going in, that kind of disregards one of these models anyway. On the other hand, there is this understanding that, somebody's got to own assets, and especially in areas that it doesn't make good investment to get there, and so that's going to be an interesting part of it. So I've given you enough for a lot of comments, and we may want to just start with Terry Theobald with his comment. His hand is raised.
Yes, thanks, Bill. Yeah, to turn everything on. Let me lower my hand. So I just went to I have a question, but I'm going to preface it with, I went to CISDA, which is the California County CIO meeting up in Monterey, nice place. And we were able to obtain a legislative update from one of the members and who specializes in that. And we also had a CPUC member speak for a bit. So my question is, so what really came out of the legislative update were two things. One is the focus on everything but middle mile, the focus on final mile, the focus on adoption, both literacy and equipment. And the other one was the funding, and where all the funding is, and how many months or years that it's away from coming to fruition. But the point I see here is it shows example cities. So Santa Barbara just did a really good job of talking about a county strategy. These aren't counties, these are cities. And I can see a city being able, a city, especially a rural city, doing really well with one of these solutions, depending upon who all's coming into play. But we're talking about, a large county, especially when the large county and the cities within the county and the other entities within the county that all have rights to submit applications to these various funding sources. I guess I'd like to find out if there is an example anywhere where a county has actually pulled off something of this scale in a collaborative manner. Not planned it, done it. Has there been any? Anybody?
Maria, was it Nevada County that we were talking to a couple weeks ago?
No, Terry asked a really great question. No one's pulled it off because it's never needed to be done. But from a regional planning perspective, yes, there are other counties that are planning at a regional level. Sonoma County and mostly rural so far. Large urban cities are doing it solo, but Sonoma County, Yolo County, Nevada County, there are counties that really are looking at more of a regional, a regional perspective to understand prioritizing, and of course, prioritizing the unserved or underserved, making those recommendations to, the CPUC and or the Golden State Connect network. I mean, we still have some ability to influence that process. So I think it might be a little bit for Ventura, different for Ventura, but for Santa Barbara and SLO County, it does make sense to, look at it regionally, but also dive down into that city, that final mile component, because the Santa Barbara project, while it is countywide, there is a final mile component for consideration by policymakers and staff at the city level.
Right. Thank you. And I know that. Matter of fact, I would argue that Ventura has a pretty decent middle mile plan. I just, to me, it's the challenges are, one, the funding, and two, sort of the, I was going to say shift, but I'm going to say pendulum that swings between technology infrastructure, whether it be middle mile or final mile, and adoption. And right now, the way the pendulum is swinging, at least within the SCAG organization, is it's focused on adoption. And part of that has to do with some of the ISPs, I think some of them are on this call, have pretty directly said this is not a technology problem. Now, we're talking about in SCAG. If we're talking about a rural area, and you gave some examples of Los Alamos, clearly, and some of the people I talked to, clearly there are still infrastructure issues that need to be addressed. I get that. Anyway, sorry, I got off on my soapbox a tad. Sorry, Bill. I'm done.
It's all good. And one of the things that coming up real quick is the local area technical assistance grant, and it doesn't take somebody with a calculator to figure out when you have 50 million and they're going to be giving out $500,000 out of the 50 million, you can only give it out to 100 different municipalities, and there's a lot more cities and in counties than 100. And so in the Santa Barbara area, we're trying to get a conversation going, and we're going to do it locally, where we try, instead of having 9 different applications and everybody compete against each other for these resources, can we come up with a regional agreement between the cities and between the county and say, this is what we all need, and submit it on behalf of all, and have everybody sign on to it. At least instead of competing against each other, we can have assurance. And maybe because the approach is so novel, we can get more than what we thought we could get. I think it's important right now to be thinking outside of the box and how we approach these things. And I think that the one message I want to be able to send back to CPUC and any agency that wants to talk about this is how we can do it together versus trying to compete against each other for these scarce dollars. Because 50 million for local area, every city says, I don't have the capacity. I don't know, we need to do this, but we just don't know how to do it. And yet there is this willingness for them to work together to figure this out regionally. And I just think that's an important message that needs to be sent and resources provided. You can't tell I'm passionate about this, can you?
In the update, they said they were going to go back for another chunk of money because everybody recognized it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, that's good to know. George.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. and interesting conversation. And, you know, something Terry said here just a moment ago, it's not a technology issue. I would wholeheartedly agree with that. It's a ability to finance these investments. Now, bringing kind of full circle to the slide that Bill has up here, I'm curious how the policy making within Santa Barbara County is going to wrap itself around these 5 models. Is there any guidance on that today? And how does that affect the regional kind of view on this? Is it premature?
Yeah, I think you have to recognize the roles at each level. You know, each municipality has its own, you know, processes, its own, you know, set of requirements, you know, their own way of dealing with permits and all that kind of stuff. What we really want to do is collect that data, come into some kind of understanding, and see if we can get some predictability, some assurance. I mean, we just, if it's really clear and understandable and in alignment to the best of what we can achieve, at least we can move things along, you know, and there's no surprises here. I think that conversation, but you know, what happens at the county level in the unincorporated areas is very different than what happens in each of the municipalities, and just having some understanding of what's necessary and why things occur and how can we work in and around and through all these things. That's a good place to start.
Yeah, I also think that there's going to be, for the last mile component, especially outside of the city of Santa Barbara, maybe the city of Goleta, maybe Carpinteria, maybe Lompoc, Santa Ynez, and Santa Maria. I think Santa Barbara County, and I realize I stretched past Santa Barbara County there, but I think that region is going to depend on wireless for the last mile connectivity and either some long haul or middle mile network to support that. I just can't see the last mile fiber deployments out to some of these really rural areas. I just don't see how it would be cost effective other than a government investment.
Yeah. Maria, you had your hand raised.
I was going to tout the benefits of, again, from a policy standpoint, George, having SBCAG as sort of that center and having the representation on that board that they have. There's a greater opportunity for some policy alignment and policy decision making that can happen, I think. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but strategically having SBCAG be that really where the policy leaders are, very well potentially should support deployment.
Okay. Any other conversations here?
Sorry, I was muted. If I understand that, and thank you very much, Maria. If you're looking at SBCAG to be the driver, that would be similar to SCAG in the Ventura area to be also the driver. And would that control the funds and then delegate it out? Has that been determined yet, or is that still?
I think that's still being discussed.
Okay.
So there's a real strong there's a real strong working relationship between our executive director, the city managers, and the county executive officer to kind of think through this, both on that level as well as on the policy level. So we have an ad hoc policy committee of SBCAG that's looking at kind of this model and other models. But we have a really good existing, infrastructure here with SBCAG because we have a transportation sales tax measure here called Measure A, and that we already work with our local jurisdiction partners on a variety of different projects that cross the regional projects that cross jurisdictional boundaries, as well as we partner with our jurisdictions on a local level to implement these projects. So those relationships exist with the city staff as well as the county staff and SBCAG.
Which is a big
space bar, which is intentional. It's an intentional relationships that's taken quite some time to develop and earn that trust and to work collaboratively together.
Boy, I would have all kinds of questions about that. Thank you.
Yeah, Kurt, you had your hand raised. Did we miss you?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to speak to George's comment about the, for that last mile, especially in a lot of rural areas, needing to be more wireless, thinking more of the wireless, especially since the technology is advanced to get faster speeds via wireless. That's another issue in Los Alamos. One of the solutions was to give hotspots to the kids there, but the nearest tower for AT&T or Verizon is 3 miles away. So it's like 1 bar, which doesn't allow for the data transfer on wireless. So and the other thing, at least that I understand too, is, like these communities that lack the last mile, they're like islands with watching the data go by, right outside their city limits, the fiber and that sort of thing. So finding the solution with the ISPs or something to invest in that last mile, I think is important. So,
Kurt, I appreciate that. When I say wireless, I don't necessarily just point out licensed wireless. It could also be unlicensed. It could be fixed wireless. It could be, point to point, et cetera. So it's kind of a catch-all, not just licensed.
Right.
Or, like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, et cetera. Thank you.
I jumped ahead to the next slide. Any other comments as we move ahead? This whole middle mile discussion is really quite fascinating. And, the County of Ventura has been working in this space for quite some time. Magellan's been a huge help in terms of the convenings of stakeholders and the development of the map on our collective behalf. The North County Ring is a concept that's been talked about, and the Chumash are kind of leading the charge, if you will, in terms of funding requests and some of the planning that goes into the North County Ring in the northern part of Santa Barbara County. I have to tell you that I've come full circle, I think, in terms of the statewide conversation. The first time I saw maps, it was all over the place, and they were the middle mile connections to nowhere. And then Scenic has been really coming in, the formation of the Golden State Network. They're putting redundancy loops in there, and it's beginning to make a lot more sense. And so now we have, in the last couple of presentations, a statewide picture that is almost looking like, there's going to be things that they're doing that we're doing that we could be doing together. And so it really is quite fascinating to see these things converge. We do want to have some fundamental principles. We want to be able to have connectivity to the north and the south and the east as 3 coastal communities. We want to have connectivity between each of ourselves as regions. And we want to also have our communities connected with multiple points. So if something happens on one point coming in, we can have another point on the other side that picks up the slack. So with those as our entry criteria, it makes for a very interesting conversation. And I think that now that we have the state, in alignment as well, and in briefings that we'll be having with the Golden State Network and others, I can see where we're going, and I'm beginning to be pretty optimistic that we can get there. And so you may have detected a change of tune on my part in recent conversations. So, Jory, I don't know if you've got any comments about what you're seeing. Terry, any thoughts about where we're at with our own efforts? But this would be a good time, probably.
I'll let Terry go first.
Yes, so I think the first, honestly, I've been out of it for at least a couple, 2-3 weeks. We're working on a regional radio project for public safety and public service that's sort of preempted all of the county's efforts on broadband. The amount of money that's going to cost us makes the broadband middle mile project look cheap. but I think one of the things that's going to be next on the agenda, we're still working with Jory and the Magellan team. We're working on, and I'll let Jory talk. He actually knows more than I do about our plan meeting with the city manager, our plan development, and it's a small development of a regional broadband website. But I think our board is going to be interested in taking what cycles we have and focusing them on our side, focusing on the issue of adoption. And that's because LA had done this exercise with adoption. I think they spent $200,000 or $300,000 on a focused area, and they increased the adoption of broadband and ACP by a big number. I think it went from the 20% range up to the 80% range. And so that's caught the attention of our board, and they're pretty interested in that. And SCAG is also pushing adoption now too, working with the ISPs and like Spectrum would be an example of one that's recently announced a 100 megabit program for $30, and with ACP it's $0. But announcing a program isn't enough. I think we all know that. The way LA was successful is they had feet on the street, knocking on the door, providing training at the elbow support, and assisting with the acquisition of devices. So we're going to need to talk about that too. That's why I said the pendulum is kind of swinging here a little bit. And that's about all I have on that subject. So thanks, Bill.
Mm-hmm. Additionally, what's going on in the county of Ventura, we are now at the stage where we are reaching out to community stakeholders and to elected officials, as well as city managers and other significant staff for letters of support. We're also reaching out to key businesses, major employers when it comes to various eligibilities for grant funding from the EDA, such as the EAA, from the NTIA for future adoption, and other underserved and unserved community improvements for use. We're also, of course, going to be participating with these letters of support with politicians, as well as school districts, hospitals, anchor institutions within the community. All of this is going to be put on the county website, and there's going to be a big governance push and support push for the community to go after the various grant sources, which there are about 4, maybe 5 that Ventura County will be eligible for. We have a grant writer. We have our first ED EB 900 forms complete. We have our project one-pagers. We've talked to the EDA in Seattle, both Wilfred and Asia a couple of times. We have support for the project, and we're encouraged moving forward that we'll be able to hit each of the deadlines once the windows for LADA, for EDA, and for last mile open up. We're also working very closely with the GSN, the Golden State Network folks, on socializing other networks throughout the state of California, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on that in just a minute. Getting them to understanding connection points and places of value for them to park their assets, equipment, and other cross-connect resources to be able to deliver last mile from the middle mile that they're building. So we're now creating sub-regional middle mile networks attached to the Golden State larger middle mile, as well as connecting last mile efforts from providers in partnership with many of local governments. Back to the city of Ventura, the county of Ventura, we will be meeting with the city managers, and we will be talking about easement rights for use of the right-of-way to get ready for construction. LADA will be used LADA funds will be used for design engineering based upon the concept that you see here on the screen in the upper left-hand corner. We will be going after digital inclusion first with the LADA funds, following up with the last mile funds, economic development with the EDA, EAA funds, and adoption, work with NTIA, and then BEAD programs as they become available in rural parts of the county. I have an observation that I just want to make after reflecting on things that a number of you have said. Bill said, obviously it's very true. Things have changed now. The government has stepped into the sphere, and that funding is available for governments to sort of build where it's not profitable, where the private sector has not and may not. So there's that coupled with, in California, you've got a lot of major cities, you've got a lot of small cities, and these cities have done really good jobs in addressing broadband over a long period of time. Terry asked, well, how many counties have done this and have been successful at it? And in the state of California, there's only a small handful. And I think the reason is that this has mostly been left up to the cities. Because the cities have had the opportunity to concentrate on small, very dense locations to connect multiple city assets for saving money, but also for partnering with their school districts or college districts, et cetera. What's changed is that the money is now made available to public agencies. And when you look at the money that's available, it's for digital inclusion. It's for those who the private sector really can't reach out to. And so now counties have to step in. Why? Because it's in those unincorporated areas where digital inclusion needs exist. And why? It's because the density is too low. Why? Because it's rural and the private sector won't build there because it's not profitable. And so counties have to get involved. And that's why counties are now building middle mile to help last mile for digital inclusion. And they're kind of late coming to the game. I've been doing this for about 28 years, but it's important that they do, because this money for public agencies is a perfect fit and earmarked for low densified county unincorporated areas.
It's a great analysis. Yeah, no, totally agree. It's the logical next step. That's why we're seeing what we're seeing. Good point. Very good. One comment I wanted to make, Jory, as well. We talked earlier about the LADA funding. The other thing that's happening, I think we're looking, your best guess, probably maybe the fall for the last mile funding, which are sizable chunks of funding, and this is something that they actually have the county's name on it. Here's amounts for particular numbers for particular dollars, and so they're really it's a call for proposals. And if the proposal checks the boxes, you'll get the sizable funds for your region. Really interested in doing everything we can do across all three counties to follow a similar template, just a cookie cutter, because my job as a consortium is to make sure that all three counties pass that, they all submit acceptable proposals. Any thoughts about what you're hearing, what you're seeing about that? I mean, we're talking potentially 60 million when you talk about the three counties and the dollars that have been assigned to each.
Yeah, I want to address one point that you made earlier, Bill, and that is that there's only $50 million to go around for LADA, and there's only $1 billion for rural and $1 billion for urban counties in the state. We don't have enough money. They don't have enough money. The $3.25 billion for building the middle mile, they're underfunded by almost $3 billion. Yep. There might be another $2 billion coming, but if that happens, which would be great, we're still underfunded. Right. But really, I think the important factor here is that we don't compete with one another, that we work together.
Yep.
And especially cities within counties. I mean, and I deal with this with coalitions of governments too. 15. I'm working with one coalition in LA County of 28 cities. And there's many coalitions in LA County, believe it. And they are competing with all the other coalitions. And instead of the money going to the county or the county applying for it, it's coalitions going after it, it's school districts that are going after it, it's municipalities that are going after it, even municipalities that are in an organized coalition of governments are going separately on their own to compete for the $500,000 for LATA funds. And the same will apply when it comes to last mile. The state of Arizona has postponed its award of its state program grants. It's now 3 months postponed, and it's probably going to be postponed for another 2 months because of the large number of applications. So working together, I think, is really important. And when you consider that, you know, really the metrics and the point systems, if you look at the points, and I recommend everyone look at the, I forget what page it is, but it's near the end of the last mile document, last mile guidelines. And it has all the points, 10 points for this, 10 points for this, 10 points for this. And there's 10 some odd rankings for scoring mechanisms for that. Look at that, because that's where you want to drive all of your eligibility toward. You want to make sure that you're getting points. It's not the great novel you're going to write. It's when you fill out the forms, do you check off all the boxes to be able to get those 10 points and those 10 points, et cetera, et cetera. So I recommend you do that. Don't compete, work at the eligibility criteria and how you get those points. And this isn't something that you do in a vacuum. You have to, if you haven't started reaching out for letters of support, you're too late.
Yeah. Any questions, George?
Question for clarification for what Jory just mentioned, and also a clarification on the allocation of funding for the tri-counties. Bill, you mentioned that the aggregate funding is estimated at 60 million for the combination of the 3 counties. And then Jory stated, if I heard this correctly, that there's a $50 million cap per LATA, if I heard that correctly.
Yes, 50 million. And as Bill, I think you said early in his presentation, it's being divided up into $500,000 chunks.
Okay, so here's my observation. I'm sure many understand the LATA and the districting of the LATA, if I said that right. But, you know, Ventura County is mostly within LATA 730, which is really coupled in within LA and all the way out to the border of Nevada and all the way up almost to, you know, or even past Mammoth, et cetera, Sierra Nevada. And then LATA 740 is mostly Santa Barbara County, San Luis Obispo County.
George, it's not latitude.
No, LATA.
LATA is an acronym for Local Area Technical Assistance.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I was thinking of it in telecom terms.
Yeah.
Local area transport.
No.
Technical assistance.
Yeah.
Okay. So
it's a specific pot of funding designated for local area technical assistance.
Same acronym, but 2 different uses. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So one other thing I'd like to say, Bill, if I might, just give me 2 minutes, is that all of you, please don't repeat the wheel or recreate the wheel. The LATA funding is supposed to be used for planning purposes so that you can be ready for last mile applications. I strongly recommend you don't mess with extraneous kinds of broadband investigations, data collections, and things that don't necessarily directly lead you to shovel-ready projects. Try to quicken the pace, streamline the effort, go for the money, go for those eligibility points, and do work that's not that is only going to benefit you in applying for the last mile or for any EDA money or any of the new NTIA money or any of the BEAD money coming out. So focus on the goalpost, focus on where you want to go, what you need to do to get there. And, you know, stop doing things like, let's review all of our policies about broadband and come up with new broadband friendly policies. Yeah, you should be doing that, but don't take away from the major goal of getting shovel ready. And use the LATA money for design engineering, so that if you have design engineering done by the time that last mile money comes out, which is probably going to be September or October, and you've got design engineering, you're going to be a lot more likely to get funding because you've got more than a bill of materials. You've got complete 100% accurate costs for what it's going to take to build the network and where it's going to be built. That's going to show that you've been working on this very diligently and you're much further ahead than the rest of the pack.
That's great counsel. Other comments? Okay. Moving on. Not going to spend a lot of time talking about Smart City today, but just it's my placeholder for future meetings. I will mention that in terms of conversations I've been having with a number of private sector partners, innovation is becoming a key word, in Smart City applications and technology applications are becoming very interesting. And as we get through the next number of months, I think that as we get into the next year, we're going to be wanting to spend a lot of time talking about the tech, but also the innovation of business models. And in the last day or so, we've talked about when it comes to the digital divide, we have certain models that have not been working. As you know, and that's why we have a divide. You know, the people are transient. You know, a number of things are going on. You know, the subscriber to the provider model is linear, and it's been somewhat bureaucratic. My words. Maybe there's a whole bunch of innovation that can occur in terms of who's providing the support, who's providing the service, what is the return on investment for that entity, that organization to be providing it. Maybe we could be looking for different models, and that's just a part of the innovation conversation. So with that, I'm going to bring it home and say, if there's updates that people want to make, this is a good time to do it. Anything that we haven't talked about that we should talk about, that would be topics as well. The floor is yours. Anything that we want to bring up. George.
So to localize the conversation in Ventura County, and I realize today's segment is really geared up towards Santa Barbara County, but I think that there's a lot of overlaps between what Ventura does within its cities and within the county and for a regional model. However, there, I think, will be some fundamental conflicts between SBCAG and also SCAG, and possibly some independent conflicts within the cities operating independently within the county. And I'm wondering how these conversations, other than the talking points within the people that are participating, how these conversations filter into the real decision makers. And if there's a strategy to perhaps, align either with greater participation, use of surrogates, et cetera. And I'm curious about your opinion, Bill, Terry's opinion, Jory's opinion, and also everyone else on the call. How do we foster one, awareness, and then greater alignment? I think it's a big lift. It's a big regional lift, and I think the conversation is a little lost in some ways. Everybody's looking at funding and getting funding or having access to funding, but it's kind of a wait and see.
I think Lauren alluded to it in her presentation, you know, maybe it was somebody else, but Margie gets all the credit in terms of the relationship she's established with the city managers. You know, this is a person, you know, it's something I said last night at the meeting, you know, we've got to rebuild these relationships of trust, and Margie's a natural when it comes to leadership, you know, at the civic level and regional level. I mean, and I can't tell you how much joy it brings me to sit at city council meetings and tag team with her, because she's really, really good, and everybody just, you know, follows. You know, we'll follow her anywhere up the hill. I mean, let's charge. I mean, and I think you need that kind of spirit to do what we're talking about. That's what's unifying us, is the ability to find a champion and that we can believe in, and then pull together strategies that we can all work on together. And I think that's what makes the hub and spoke model work, is the fact that we've got that kind of regional leadership to pull it off, and it's just been terrific.
No, that's so spot on, Bill. And I have to congratulate you all on working together and creating governance, because it's a very difficult thing to do. You know, because the cities don't always work with the county, because the county works with unincorporated areas, and they don't often have an opportunity to cross over working with local municipalities. I've got, 40 years in public sector, and the county was always like, oh, those people over there, they don't know anything of what's going on locally here. But you've got to, if you have something that's unifying you, like you say, Bill, and I think what Santa Barbara County has proven, you can do some pretty great things together. Terry mentioned his public safety application, which is, I think, now somewhere in the tune of $90 million. That project also requires all the public safety agencies throughout the Ventura County to come together. And if you have a unified purpose and you set your goals, and you even put together some bylaws, and you meet on a regular basis, you organize, and everyone is accountable to report back and to have action items and to follow through, working on the next steps. If it's getting letters of support, or if it's getting funding pulling money out of your finance department for Dig One, so whatever it might be that you're all working on collectively, do that. But I recommend, don't have one champion. You need a task force or a group of champions.
I would say too, for Santa Barbara County, there's also a buy-in here, right? So we have an MOU that exists with each of the cities and the county that allows for independence work of the city, and then the collaboration of SBCAG and the partnership with the consortium, as well as the private sector. We have Econ Alliance that's organizing the outreach meetings. It's really about communication. We have that fundamentally built into the work that we do in Santa Barbara County. We recognize the autonomy of our cities. We recognize the autonomy of the county, and we are here to be good partners in their effort. So it's about listening to where the needs are, understanding what those needs are, identifying the priorities, and having the buy-in from our leadership. Our policy leaders are the ones that drove this, and we are really working together to make that happen. As I mentioned, the Measure A transportation sales tax measure baked in a process of accountability in the county. We have a very robust structure of collaboration with public works and planning folks of cities and counties that work together on a technical level, all the way to a North County and a South County policy board, as well as the SBCAG board. And so when I say that SBCAG works to solve regional problems that cross jurisdictional boundaries, that's what we do. And we have worked really hard, and to Margie's credit, to build that and to listen to that. And we have, I'm looking at John Eliason right here. We work with carpentry on a regular basis and on projects. And so that partnership is really important and essential to what we do.
So, and I appreciate all of these to address kind of my statements and my questions. The wheels of government turn slowly, and Bill, and I have talked about this quite a lot over the years, that a lot of the decision making is very siloed within projects. And last month we spoke, Jory reaffirmed some of this, that without the cities and the counties having a broadband master plan or a master strategy that they have all adopted, and whether it's dig once or investment, these conversations, my opinion, from my observations, that these conversations will remain siloed. And you may have a representative on council or supervisor that will participate in SBCAG and report back to council, or the same with SCAG. But they will only have the opportunity to maybe give a report. They are not necessarily having staff produce results in alignment. I think to foster the adoption of a broadband strategy, unless there's a strategy or a master plan in place. And I find that it's missing.
The master plan, George, helps quite a bit because it is something that everyone is striving for, and hopefully it is internalized as a vision and a value for the organization. But you were almost going there. You were
almost correct, and then I stopped myself.
No, you were right. You just didn't give enough specific examples. What government isn't good at, we're good at creating things, but we're not good at maintaining things. So we talk a good case about, yes, we're going to do this and we're going to build this, but we don't put money behind to maintain them. We don't put the capacity of resources there to maintain them. And then we don't expect people to inculcate this in their everyday lives. Oh, that's the broadband committee. They're working on something. We'll hear back from them in a year or so when they finish their master plan. That's not how we need to approach this. Everyone needs to understand in planning, in public works, in IT, in economic development, that anything they do in their everyday lives now has a broadband component in it. It is part of urban planning. It should be the fabric of all of our work as government employees.
Oh boy, it would be great to get a soundbite of that and email it to everybody who's registered in the database. Thanks, Jory, appreciate it.
There are business processes that I won't bore you all with that really create the right kind of governance and best practices. Maybe Bill and I will work on something for all of you.
Yeah, the one point I wanted to make though is Maria talks a lot to me about messaging. So much of this is in communication. Broadband is a hard topic. We're dealing with lay people constantly. And we have to, every community meeting, we have this drawing. This is what broadband is. This is what it means. This is what the word is. We try to ground it. But there's this whole process has been watching people have light bulbs come on. I didn't know that. I mean, and over and over again, you'll see council members get their light bulbs turned on, and it's like all of a sudden they recognize we can't be siloed. We have to interconnect. We have to connect to the community next to us. We have to connect to the region, and all of a sudden, they get it. But there's an education and process involved, and we've been having to go through with literally every council member every step of the way, so they recognize what we're talking about. When you say a word like middle mile or whatever, redundancy, resiliency, what do they mean?
You absolutely have to have the buy-in 100% of the public sector, because again, we keep talking about this at these meetings as well. The funding is going to be channeled through the public sector. So you can't operate in a silo when you're planning at a regional level. You're engaged at the way we're engaged in Santa Barbara County with all the cities, presenting to all the city councils, engaging in forums within those communities. That the success will be any coalition, the hope for success is any of the coalition building that's happening through this process, so that then we can be doing these LATA, applications together, and we can prioritize and support each other within the county in what should be shovel ready first. There are areas that need attention prior to other areas, and agreements around prioritization is also really important. So the coalition building and agreements around prioritization has been baked into the process that Santa Barbara County is doing right now. There's basically been this acknowledgement like, yeah, we're going to have to do this here first probably, and this would be a great way to do it. So it's, you know, again, it's going to be really exciting to see all the work efforts come to fruition, because I believe there will be fruition from the level of engagement and intensity. But it is really exciting to see the public sector so engaged in these conversations. While skeptical, we all skeptical, like Bill said, he was skeptical at first when we were watching what Middle Mile was doing, but the optimism is definitely filtering in. So it'll be fun to see how Santa Barbara plays out.
Let me just give you, can I have 2 minutes, Bill? We're running late. I apologize. Let me just give you some examples, just to whet your appetite of what we might be able to deliver to you. But you know, every city should have $250,000 set aside for dig once right now. If you don't have money set aside, when these opportunities like permits come into your right of way, when people are installing, you know, service providers are installing 5G, they've got to do an encroachment permit and they got to put in the fiber. You should have money to set aside so you can put a conduit for your own system too, if it makes sense for the things that you need to reach out to connect to save money. And then you establish an enterprise fund so that when you save money, the money goes into the enterprise fund and keeps priming the pump and keeps building on what you can do to support broadband. Every time you have a development agreement, every time you ask for housing money, for housing starts from HUD or CDBG money, you should be using that as well. Every time you put together your capital improvement project funds, there should be a broadband component in there. Are we in the ground? Is this going to be an opportunity for us to put in conduit? ISD, you know, your IT people or your public works people should have sign-up responsibilities for all your general fund improvements, and any highway work, any road work that you do. I mean, this has got to be, like I said, ingrained in your everyday lives of everybody at a public counter and anyone who's making a decision about how government money is spent. And if they were just to think in the normal course of doing their business, oh, there's a development agreement, we're widening sidewalks. Well, let's put in a mitigation and let's put conduit in those sidewalks so that we're widening at the same time. I mean, it is that kind of thinking that we all have to embed. Yes, we need support from city councils, but I mean, I was part of a system, and you know, my team and I, we built a $75 million asset with a loan from the general fund for $530,000, and we paid it back in 9 months. Which has now made $27.5 million in net profit. So, I mean, this can be done, and we don't even need all this money. You just need to have some common sense. We need to have some common sense, and we need to have some good best practices in place.
Great. That's a good summary, Jory. Any other comments for the good of the order? We're a little bit early, but we have a little bit more time, but there's nothing wrong with an early dismissal as well. I've got to drive up to Solvang today.
You know, one thing I would also just add from a closing thought from my perspective is the economic value of these investments need to be quantified and qualified for how they would impact the region, the county, the city for economic development and strategy. And potentially if there is additional investment required by, you know, a city or a county for, you know, some kind of matching contribution in one of those 5 models, I think, you know, there needs to be, you know, some kind of correlation for return on investment or a payback or, you know, a long-term view on a JPA, et cetera. I know we've talked about this from a high level, but my viewpoint is I've only seen it from a high level. I haven't seen, other than what Magellan has supplied as a study to previous cities that they've been contracted by. You know, that's one model, but I think there are other models to explore in addition to those models. And it would be great to bring that into the framework with economic development as well.
Noted. Any other comments?
Bill, Don has a question asking, and I was going to answer, but will last mile monies in rural areas with insufficient middle mile broadband be funded? I think that's a difficult question to answer right now, where we're still kind of going through the planning process.
Actually, I was kind of wondering, is it a basis for funding these rural areas if they go out and they win the bid for their area, but is it just utilizing monies that could have been better spent elsewhere?
Are you talking about places like Wheeler Canyon?
My mind was in Santa Barbara area. Just, you know, something that was just, there's communities that need it. And if they apply for it and they get the money, but then it's a circuit to nowhere, that's not going to do much good. I
think that one of my first thoughts goes to the middle mile planning efforts underway right now, and some of the work that's being developed, especially by RCRC, and again that the Golden State Connect projects, and identifying where those middle mile mappings are. I think that will come into consideration, especially when you're talking about rural areas. And I think we talked a little bit about it last month, but it may be worth reviewing some of those other efforts that are happening at the state level, Bill, mapping out some of those middle mile places that would support rural final mile.
Yeah, I think it's certainly going to be a necessary conversation. And I think the intent is to fund it, but, you know, Jory, I think eloquently pointed out the fact that there still has not been enough funding allocated for all of this. And so, you know, we got into this whole discussion at Los Alamos about fiber versus wireless. I mean, and what technologies would we be using, you know, to do some of these rural areas? And I do think that there is a role for all technologies.
Well, we have to remember too that part of the legislation in 2021 too was I don't have time to go into it, but the loss leader funding for municipalities and the public sector to sell bonds, loans. There's a whole new mechanism that's been opened up in California just in the last year that hasn't been fully explored. Again, RCRC is starting to work through some of that, but we haven't really, I mean, I touch on it when I present to city councils when we talk about these abilities to sell bonds, but we have not explored the fact that there's a way to potentially generate some revenue to create opportunities to invest. So those public-private partnerships are really key, and some of the new legislation is really key to explore. And I think that, yes, they recognize that there has been a big gap in funding availability. And that's where I think regional work we have the most benefit. Regional work is looking at that larger footprint of possibly doing some sort of bond sale. So these are bigger conversations to have moving forward as we're talking about this.
I just have one caution about wireless. And wireless, you know, obviously is very, very good for rural areas, and is an important quick way in which to deploy broadband and generate a marketplace for others investors to come in and to play. But also please know that in going after last mile money, the FFA from the Treasury is pretty much mandating states that they have to prefer fiber, wired connectivity over wireless. So read the language very carefully in the last mile guidelines. You can use wireless in very rural settings where it's cost prohibitive to deploy fiber. But fiber, you get a lot more points with fiber than you do with wireless deployments. So just be aware of that.
Good to know. Thank you for that. Well, everybody, anything else before we go? Lauren, thank you so much for presenting today. Just thrilled to death that you could join us and be part of the conversation. We appreciated you getting everybody updated.
Yes, thank you for having me here, and look forward to continuing the conversation over this next year as we wrap this effort up.
We had a great meeting and a great turnout. We appreciate you all being here. So
thanks, Bill.
All right. Happy Thursday. We'll see you guys later.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Good day, everyone.